At the core of a defining moment in the Civil War, this compelling narrative immerses you in the turmoil and uncertainty of Gettysburg through the perspective of a man caught between obligation and hesitation. Today, we explore a first-hand account so powerful it could reshape our understanding of history. A stark examination of the disorder within Confederate ranks and the brutal truths endured by those who fought in the crucial Battle of Gettysburg. Was Lee mistaken? Did Longstreet hold the key to the truth? Prepare yourself, for this is the untold story of Gettysburg as you've never encountered before. Before we proceed, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel to support our expanding community. As dawn broke on July 2, 1863, General James Longstreet faced a critical juncture. The burden of leadership weighed heavily on him. Not only the duty of guiding men into battle, but also the looming shadow of defeat threatening the Confederacy. General James Longstreet, Lee's most trusted subordinate, found himself ensnared in a dilemma, advocating for a cautious strategy against fortified Union forces. His instincts urged restraint. Through vivid portrayals and introspective moments, we observe his inner conflict, a struggle not only against the enemy but also against his own doubts. Could devotion to a flawed plan spell ruin for them all? Amid the thunder of artillery and the cries of the wounded, Longstreet confronted an impossible decision. Every choice in those searing hours would echo through history, shaping the destiny of armies and perhaps the war itself. This is the untold tale of leadership under pressure, of a general who foresaw catastrophe, yet marched toward it regardless. A pivotal encounter. Longstreet and Lee. On May 9, 1863, James Longstreet arrived at the winter camp of the Army of Northern Virginia, where he conferred with its commander, Robert E. Lee. The two generals reviewed the recent Battle of Chancellorsville and the grievous wounding of General Stonewall Jackson, a loss that deeply affected Lee. Tragically, the next day, May 10th, Jackson succumbed to his injuries. With the Second Corps now without a leader, Lee relied on Longstreet to strategize their next steps. A campaign at a turning point, their discussions would shape what became known as the Gettysburg Campaign. Yet beneath the planning lay conflicting perspectives. Longstreet advocated for a defensive stance, while Lee favored aggressive action. The stakes, the survival of the Confederacy itself. Stay with us as we reveal the hidden tensions, critical choices, and profound consequences of this defining moment in history. After the war, Longstreet dedicated considerable effort in his writings to recounting his meetings with Lee from May 9 to May 10. These conversations laid the groundwork for what would later be called the Gettysburg Campaign. Longstreet repeatedly suggested deploying 2 divisions from his corps to Tennessee, aiming to join forces with the Army of Tennessee and Joseph E. Johnston's troops. His plan was to defeat the Army of the Cumberland near Chattanooga and then advance into Kentucky, potentially threatening Cincinnati. He believed this strategy was vital to prevent Vicksburg's fall. However, Lee preferred an offensive into Pennsylvania. Longstreet argued for a defensive approach, compelling the enemy to attack on Southern terms, where Confederate forces could fight from strong positions and secure victory. Despite his persistence, Longstreet later reflected that it became futile and inappropriate to continue pressing his alternative plan. Lee remained committed to his invasion strategy, while Longstreet feared Vicksburg might fall before they could act. A debated invasion plan. Despite his private concerns about Lee's strategy, General Longstreet expressed surprise and optimism in a letter to Senator Louis T. Wigfall, writing, "If we can cross the Potomac with 75,000 men, we compel Lincoln to reveal his intentions, peace or annihilation." His words suggested confidence in the Pennsylvania invasion, contradicting his later criticisms. Yet tensions lingered beneath the surface. Lee had restructured the Army of Northern Virginia, promoting Richard S. Ewell to replace Stonewall Jackson and forming a new Third Corps under A.P. Hill. Longstreet supported Ewell but privately questioned Hill's leadership, favoring D.H. Hill for the role. The McLaws dispute. One of the most contentious issues arose with Lafayette-McLaws, whose division remained under Longstreet's command. Lee, dissatisfied with McLaws' performance at Chancellorsville, considered reassigning him, but McLaws resisted, asserting his fitness for duty. Longstreet, though doubtful, took responsibility for McLaws' performance, warning Lee that any failures would rest on his shoulders. The arduous march north. As the army began its advance on June 3rd, Longstreet's First Corps, comprising McLaws, Hood's, and Pickett's divisions, pressed forward under the scorching summer sun. An officer noted Longstreet's fatigue, but the general sharply replied, "I've never felt exhaustion in my life." Behind the scenes, Longstreet tirelessly coordinated with Jeb Stuart's cavalry to mask their movements through the Blue Ridge gaps. Meanwhile, Lee heavily relied on his counsel, consulting him at every stage, a testament to their strained yet essential partnership. A divergence of strategies, though Longstreet later claimed he preferred Western campaigns. His actions in May 1863 show a commander fully committed to the invasion plan. He even proposed exchanging McLaws for Bragg's division to strengthen their forces, a suggestion Lee declined. The stage was set for Gettysburg. Two generals, united in purpose but divided in approach, marched toward a battle that would determine the Confederacy's fate. June 27th, Chambersburg headquarters. By June 27, 1863, part of Lee's army reached Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, establishing temporary headquarters. British observer Arthur Freemantle of the Coldstream Guards noted the strong bond between Lee and Longstreet, writing, "Their connection is deeply moving. They are nearly inseparable." Yet beneath this, tension simmered. Some of Longstreet's officers grumbled about the constant closeness of the two generals, feeling it restricted their autonomy compared to Ewell's corps. June 28, a critical intelligence gap. With J.E.B. Stuart's cavalry absent, Lee lacked reliable reconnaissance. That changed when Scout Harrison, compensated with gold coins, reached Longstreet's headquarters with urgent news. The Union Army was advancing rapidly. Lee, initially planning to move on Harrisburg, abruptly altered course. "Gentlemen, we will not advance to Harrisburg as planned," he announced. "Instead, we will head to Gettysburg to investigate General Meade's movements." June 30th, marched toward Cashtown. The Confederates shifted east toward Cashtown, setting up headquarters near an abandoned sawmill. Longstreet, sensing the approaching storm, slept little that night, his mind troubled by the impending battle. July 1st, the battle begins. At dawn, Union and Confederate forces clashed outside Gettysburg. As Longstreet, Lee, and Freemantle rode along the Chambersburg Pike, they spotted Federal troops regrouping on high ground beyond the town. Lee, seeing an opportunity, remarked, "We could not have positioned the enemy more favorably for our plans." Longstreet, ever cautious, countered, "If they are there, it's because they choose to be." Despite his reservations, Lee was determined. Striking his fist into his hand, he declared, "If the enemy is there tomorrow, we must engage him." July 2nd, the decisive moment. Before dawn, a weary Longstreet rode to Seminary Ridge to meet Lee. The plan: flank the Union left and seize key high ground. But as the sun rose, Longstreet's apprehension deepened. Was this a misstep they would regret? July 2nd, 1863. A clash of strategies, morning preparations. At daybreak, General Lee finalized plans for a full-scale assault on Union positions. Over breakfast, he met with Longstreet, A.P. Hill, Henry Haight, and John Bell Hood near Seminary Ridge. The air was thick with tension. Longstreet, wary of a frontal attack, urged a flanking maneuver to outmaneuver Meade's army. Lee dismissed the idea. Pointing to a map, he declared, "General, I want your division positioned across this road." "Can you do it?" The flawed reconnaissance. Captain Samuel Johnston, Lee's staff, and Major John Clark, Longstreet's staff, scouted southeast toward Little Round Top and the Peach Orchard. They reported encountering only 4 Federal cavalrymen, a significant underestimation. McLaws' frustration. Division Commander Lafayette McLaws requested permission to verify the terrain himself. Longstreet refused, snapping, "I don't want you leaving your division." Critical misstep. Johnston's inaccurate report suggested the Union left was vulnerable. In reality, 3rd Corps infantry lay hidden in the mist. The disputed deployment. Lee traced a perpendicular line across the Emmitsburg Road on his map, ordering McLaws to attack directly. McLaws protested, sketching a parallel line instead. "Sir, I suggest positioning here, enveloping their flank." Lee overruled him. "No, General, I want it placed perpendicular." Longstreet's quiet resistance. As Lee rode off to consult Ewell, Longstreet lingered, visibly uneasy. Privately, he confided to Hood, "We should swing past their left, positioning ourselves between Meade and Washington." But with Lee's resolve firm, he reluctantly prepared for battle. Noon, the point of no return. By 11 a.m., Lee returned and issued final orders. McLaws and Hood's divisions would lead the assault. a decision that would spark the bloodiest hours of the battle. July 2nd, 1863. The assault begins. 4 p.m. The advance commences. Like a ponderous beast, the Confederate assault moved forward at 4 p.m. Hood's division targeted Devil's Den and Little Round Top, while McLaws' men advanced toward the wheat field and peach orchard. Critical delay. Longstreet insisted Hood wait for a delayed brigade, losing valuable daylight. Misled troops. McLaws discovered too late that Longstreet had misrepresented Union positions. Federal forces were already entrenched ahead. Longstreet's uncharacteristic hesitation. Observers noted the general lacked his usual vigor. He approached this duty with less energy than he'd shown at 2nd Manassas or Fredericksburg. Edward Porter, Alexander. Yet amid the chaos, Longstreet remained resolute as stone on horseback, observing artillery impacts through his spyglass as debris fell around him. A costly roadblock. 3 p.m. Kershaw's brigade endured devastating artillery fire after being channeled onto exposed roads where Union signal stations could detect them. Missed opportunity. Johnston had urged using concealed fields, but Longstreet insisted on the predictable roadway approach. A moment of truth. When Hood's scouts reported a chance to flank the Union right, Longstreet rejected 4 requests to adjust tactics. As McLaws later wrote, "It was there I realized we'd been misled about enemy positions. The irony of leadership." As Wofford's Georgians charged forward with desperate courage, troops erupted in cheers at the sight of Longstreet, their steadfast leader unaware their commander had privately opposed this very attack. July 2nd to 3rd, 1863. The reluctant attack persists. The aftermath of bloody July 2nd. As dust fell on the battered Confederate right, Federal prisoners captured earlier by Barksdale's Mississippians stared in awe at Longstreet. One Yankee asked, "Who led these rebels?" Upon learning it was Old Pete, he muttered, "Now I see why we're defeated on every field. No other lieutenant general in your army would risk men like this." Yet Longstreet, his boots stained with the blood of Hood's and McLaws' divisions, snapped at his cheering troops. Silent men fight harder. The irony was bitter. The general who opposed Lee's plan now bore the weight of its execution. Midnight Council, a clash of wills. At sunrise on July 3rd, Lee rode to Longstreet's headquarters, demanding a renewed assault. Longstreet, who'd spent the night scouting, argued fiercely. "General, I've been a soldier all my life. 15,000 men cannot take that ridge. Let me flank Meade instead." Lee jabbed his fist toward Cemetery Ridge. "We attacked there with your corps." Unspoken truth. Neither informed Pickett his fresh division would lead the charge. Alexander's account suggests Longstreet never received the dawn attack order. Whether from oversight or deliberate silence remains debated. The iron statue falters. For the first time since Antietam, Longstreet positioned himself dangerously close to the front, watching as Hood's crippled Texans limped past. McLaws' Georgians buried comrades in the wheat field. Kershaw's Carolinians stacked rifles like funeral pyres. An aide noted Longstreet's hands trembled, not from fear but from helpless frustration at the waist. That night he refused to personally report to Lee, sending only a brief casualty list. July 3rd, 1863, high noon at Gettysburg. Lee's final gamble. As the morning fog lifted, Lee pointed toward Cemetery Ridge with unwavering resolve. "The enemy is there, and I will strike him." Longstreet, his face pale, made one last plea. "General, I've been a soldier all my life." "No 15,000 men can take that position." Lee's response was a silent fist slammed toward the ridge. The order was final. The artillery dilemma. At 11:45 a.m., Longstreet sent a desperate note to Colonel Edward Porter Alexander, his artillery chief. "If our fire does not dislodge or weaken the enemy, do not advise Pickett to charge. I trust your judgment." Alexander, recognizing the implicit shift of command, consulted Brigadier General Ambrose Wright, but the plan was already in motion. Troops in disarray. Pickett's Virginians formed in 2 gleaming lines, unaware they'd spearhead the assault. Hill's battered brigades, still reeling from July 1st, struggled to support Pickett's left. Hood and McLaws excluded. Their divisions were depleted from the previous day's fighting. A.P. Hill, technically in command, deferred entirely to Longstreet. A fatal lack of coordination. The artillery bombardment. At 12:15 p.m., 170 Confederate cannons opened fire. Alexander later wrote, "Smoke obscured everything. I couldn't tell if we'd silenced their guns, but Longstreet had already decided. The charge begins." As Pickett's men stepped off at 3 p.m., Longstreet, unable to watch, turned away. His final words to Alexander, "I don't wish to make this charge. Not now. Not here." In the balance hung 12,500 Confederate lives. "For God's sake, come quick." The agony of Pickett's charge. July 3, 1863. 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. The barrage that failed. At 1 p.m., 150 Confederate cannons erupted in the war's largest artillery duel. But the smoke and chaos concealed a fatal truth. "We're hitting them hard," shouted gunners. "No, their batteries are pulling back to reload," realized Colonel Alexander, watching Union guns retreat intact. Longstreet, gripping a fence rail until his knuckles whitened, turned to Alexander. "I don't want to make this attack." Now." The reluctant nod. When Pickett approached for final orders, his question cut deeply. "General, shall I advance?" Longstreet could only bow his head silently, a gesture soldiers would later call the death knell of the Confederacy. Through Hell's Gateway. As 12,500 men stepped off, Brigadier General Kemper warned Longstreet, "A dozen men fall here every second." Fremantle, the British observer, marveled at Pickett, riding like a parade ground figure into the storm, while Longstreet sat frozen. A man witnessing his own tragedy. The message that came too late. At 2:45 p.m., a courier raced through cannon fire with Alexander's desperate note. "For God's sake, come quick. We can't support you." Pickett never saw it. His division was already half destroyed. At the angle, Armistead's retreat from the angle. As shattered remnants of Pickett's division staggered back to Seminary Ridge, General Longstreet met a shaken staff officer who gasped, "General, we must regroup. The men need the devil." "You wouldn't." Longstreet growled, "I'd have preferred to avoid this entirely." With Union cheers echoing across the field, he and Lee ordered the bloody but unbroken Army of Northern Virginia to retreat, marking the end of the Confederacy's last great offensive. The ride through the devastation. Lee, riding among survivors, "It's all my fault. You must help me save these men." Longstreet, silently counting empty spaces in ranks. Every missing face was a man who'd followed orders. He'd opposed. Fremantle's observation, the Southerners looked like spirits emerging from their own graves. The unanswerable questions. As campfires glowed in Virginia weeks later, Longstreet grappled with history's verdict. Would it judge him as cautious or cowardly? Could flanking Meade's left have altered the war? Did 12,000 men die for a general's pride? Why, this still matters. Leadership under fire contrasts Lee's accountability with Longstreet's suppressed anger. The what-if, that shapes history. The missed opportunity for defensive tactics. Moral weight. Longstreet's later Union service proved his crisis wasn't about loyalty. Gettysburg wasn't the end, but for Longstreet and Lee, it was the day the war and their legacies changed forever. Subscribe for Longstreet's redemption, the wilderness to Appomattox.